Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Awesome Build, where this week we're going to be building Jyn Erso's blaster from Rogue One. Well, as you may or may not have guessed by now, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan, and Rogue One comes out this week. Ever since the first teaser trailer got released and we saw just a glimpse of Jyn Erso's blaster, I've been wanting to do this build. I could tell right away that it was built around a German Luger with like a barrel extension, but that was about it. I couldn't get any real clear images of just the gun or any close-ups of it online for a long time. But in the last few weeks, some more have been popping up, mostly other people's interpretations or other people's versions of the build. That combined with some screenshots and some artwork and stuff like that that I've seen. So using that, I'm going to do my best to try and make as close to a movie accurate prop as I can. Fortunately, I do have a replica of a Luger, which the body of the gun is built around. However, I'm going to have to be doing a lot of modifications to this. I'm probably going to have to cut the barrel down. I'm going to have to grind some pieces out, screw pieces onto it, and I'd rather not ruin a perfectly good replica. So we're going to use this and make a two-part mold using the same materials that we talked about in the previous episode. Only this is going to be a two-part, and we're going to pour our resins into it and get an exact copy of this Luger. So it'll be made out of resin. It's hard plastic, but it'll be easier to sand and cut and grind, and I don't have to worry about ruining a perfectly good replica. I just have to pour about $15 worth of resin into a mold. So, as I said, the rest of the components are going to be pretty simple. They're going to be things that you can buy at the hardware store. The barrel size that I'm going to go with, I think I'm going to use a 3/4 inch PVC and a 3/4 inch PVC coupling. We're also going to be using some 1/2 inch PVC. I'm just going to cut the tip off to fit for the tip of the barrel. And then for the ribbing, there's some machining and ribbing on the barrel. Rather than doing any machining and stuff on this PVC, I don't really have the materials, I don't really have the tools to do that. I would have to do it by hand, which would take a lot of time. So instead I'm going to use this piece of flexible tubing. As the ribbing is really close together. Yeah, I got this at Home Depot a while back, and I've used it for different projects and stuff like that, so I have a bunch of this hose, but it was pretty inexpensive. And then we're also going to be using some various size dowel rods, and we'll be kind of tying it all together using super glue and JB Weld's plastic weld. So the first process is we have to make the gun by pouring our resins into our mold. So let's take a look at that. So in the future, I will be doing a tutorial on making a two-part mold. It's very similar to the one-part mold, obviously, but when making a two-part mold, you have to build registration keys into your mold so that the two pieces fit together the same way every time. That way you don't get any shifting or anything like that in your mold. Then here I'm just sandwiching the two pieces between some scrap plywood and clamping it down so that it's airtight. You have to be careful not to clamp it down too much so it doesn't compress the mold and warp or misshape the outcome of the mold. And this is the same process, mixing up the resins and pouring them into our mold. And once the mold cures, we can open it up and see what we got. And as you can see, it's a pretty good duplicate of the Luger. Now you could use certain resins to add pigment, so if you wanted to, you could make it all black right out of the mold, or any color that you want. I just had some white that I had to use up, so that's why I wound up using this. And cut off our excess plastic, and after some sanding and shaping, we're good to go. I took my ribbed hose and I cut a little bit more than the length that I wanted because some of it's going to fit into my 3/4 inch PVC coupling. The diameter of the hose is actually a little larger than I needed. I wanted it to be the exact diameter of the 3/4 inch PVC, so I cut a section out of it. Now my 3/4 inch PVC, I measured out the distance in which I wanted the holes to be in the sides of the gun. Using an architect's ruler, it kind of helps out to get straight, even lines. Once I knew exactly where I wanted my holes to be, I drilled some small pilot holes to make sure that everything was lined up. I then gradually used larger bits to open up the hole. Once I had that one side perfect, I then used my drill press to drill through those holes through the other side so that everything lined up evenly. Using some 2-part epoxy, I'm going to mix it up here, and I'm going to glue this dowel rod to the body of the gun. As you can see, I cut the barrel of the gun off and drilled a hole into the dowel rod and the body of the gun. I then took a metal rod, and that's going to go inside the gun and the dowel rod to tie it together and hold it so that it's secure. Now once that's dried, I'm going to fit my piece of ribbed hose over the dowel rod. Using some hot glue, I'm going to glue that into place. And as you can see, I left a little bit of a gap underneath. And the reason I did that is because there's going to be another kind of black piece that fits underneath the barrel, and I want that to kind of slip into that groove. Alright, now I got my holes drilled, my 1/2 inch PVC on the tip, and then my coupling I cut in half, and that's going to be the part that ties that part of the barrel in with the ribbed part. That clear plastic is some scrap discarded plastic tubing that I cut to fit inside the barrel so that it closes up those holes. Now the piece that goes underneath the barrel, I first cut out of a piece of scrap foam board. Once I thought I had the dimensions right, I then traced it onto a scrap piece of thermoforming plastics that I had and cut it out. Once everything was sanded and ground down to where it looked pretty close to the dimensions that I had, I then had to clean it up a little bit, and there was a hole or kind of like a slot in the middle of that. I drilled out and then filed down. This was the most time-consuming part, I think, on the whole gun, was this black bracket, or this black piece that goes underneath the barrel. It took a lot of sanding and grinding to make sure that everything looked right and it was clean, and that it was going to fit just right underneath the barrel. And once I was happy with the way it looked and it was all going to fit right, I then glued the front of the barrel to the ribbed part. After I had done this, I realized I still needed to grind out part of the gun. I probably would have done this before actually having glued the barrel on. Using some more of the 2-part epoxy, I filled in that groove and applied some to that plastic piece that's going to go underneath the barrel. Once I had it all lined up, I let that sit and cure. I then took another piece of scrap plastic and drew, there's another kind of bracket that goes on the side of the gun where we kind of ground out those areas. Once I cut that out, I took some 3/4 inch PVC and cut it in half. Now this is going to be the top part of that bracket. That's going to fit over the top of the gun and tie into that bracket that we just cut. I'm going to drill out my holes. it looks like they use rivets. So I've got some rivets, and I'm just going to cut the ends off and glue them to the bracket. Now I just used regular super glue to glue those rivets in. Now on the other side, where we kind of ground down, I'm going to draw out the shape of the bracket that I want. And the reason why I'm doing this is actually I decided to use the plastic well to sculpt this piece rather than cut it out, because it actually had to be a little thicker and tie into the PVC piece that goes along the top. I wanted it to blend in seamlessly, so I thought that this would be the best way to do it. Once I sculpted the basic shape, when it cures, I can sand it so that it's nice and clean and smooth, and the lines blend in well with that PVC piece. I can also then drill it and add our rivets. Now the body of the gun is finished. Now we're ready for painting. I used Krylon. I used a black satin finish because I wanted the gun to kind of have a little bit of a shine to it. However, I wound up going over it again with a gunmetal gray, so I probably could have started out with just a flat black. I then taped off all of the areas that I wanted to keep black, and the pieces that I wanted to have a more metallic look, I went over with a brushed metallic.
Alright, so this is it. Overall, I think it turned out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. There are a few things I would change about it. The overall look, I think, is pretty solid. There's some detailing and things, some little minor things that I would still probably go in and clean up a little bit. I may go in and do a little bit of detailing and weathering on some of the parts and stuff like that. But for right now, I'm actually kind of happy with the way it looks. Kind of like almost right out of the box. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was a really fun build for me to do, and it was actually a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I knew it wasn't going to be easy going in. It's a clean, it's a simple design, but it's got a lot of nuances and details and stuff like that in it that I knew I was going to have to pay a lot of attention to. So it was a little challenging. Actually, I did run into some hiccups here and there, but ultimately I'm happy with the way it turned out. I hope you guys found this entertaining and or informative. I hope it inspires you guys to go out and build and make some props of your own. As always, don't forget to look me up on Facebook at James Jim J-Raz. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the show. You guys rock. I'll see you next time.